Hello friends, and welcome back to another book video. This year is going so fast and I cannot believe that it is May. We're almost halfway through the year and I am fully on track for how many books I want to read this year. My aim this year is 50 and I am currently at 21. So if I read another 4 in June, I should be on track, which is so fun. Please excuse the fact that I literally have just got out of the shower and have wet hair. But if you follow my non-book related content, you will know I have a young daughter, Harper, who is 11 months old, and she's currently napping, and we've got to take the time when we can. So I literally just showered, washed my hair, and put some makeup on so that I could film this video while she still naps, because we're on a time crunch 24/7. So this month I read 5 books and I DNF'd 1 book. Again, if you watch my vlogs, I sort of update throughout the week how I'm going with my reading and sort of what I'm thinking and feeling about the books that I'm reading, just very lightly throughout my vlogs. But I try to keep most of it for here. Now, I did some buddy reading this month with Rachel Catherine. Again, if you don't already watch her book-related content or just her vlogs and lifestyle content in general, I will have her link down below. I have loved listening to her book content for quite a while now, and yeah, she's just amazing. So if you don't already watch her for book content or normal content, I highly recommend. Hello Ziggy, sit, drop, drop, good boy. So the first book I read in May was Most of All You by Mia Sheridan, and this is one that Rachel and I actually buddy read. So we have our own little 2-person book club, and it is the dream, if I'm honest, because we will pick a book and we'll read it at the same time and we'll talk about it throughout when we're reading it, and then once we are finished reading it, we'll do a big debrief in voice messages, and it's just the best. So I highly recommend find a book buddy, because buddy reading is my new favourite thing. So we started off with Most of All You by Mia Sheridan. Now, Mia Sheridan is the author. She is the author who wrote Archer's Voice, which I have not read yet. But I wanted to start on one of her other books to see if I like her writing, because I feel like there's so much hype around Archer's Voice that I'm kind of scared to read it. So, Most of All You, this was an amazing start to the month. I rated it a 4.5 stars. It was like almost perfect. I honestly loved this book. It is about a woman called Crystal, and she has sort of a lot of trauma and a pretty rough background, basically, and she really doesn't feel like she deserves anything in life. She works in a strip club as a dancer, and she just thinks that that's as good as it's ever going to get for her, and life kind of sucks and life is hard, and she doesn't deserve much better than that. She thinks she's not a good person, that's what she deserves, and she's really hard on herself. It's really kind of heartbreaking. She then bumps into Gabriel. Now, she knows who he is because he was all through the news as a child. This, like, isn't spoilers or anything, really, but he was abducted as a child, and basically the whole town knows who he is. So she knew who he was, and he saw her and decided he needed her help, basically, with something very specific, which I'm not going to go into because I feel like that could be spoilery, but basically he seeks her out and needs her help. It's kind of a slow-paced book, I will say. It's not super fast-paced. I don't feel like it was, like, I don't know, you really got to learn about the characters and see them a lot before the story began too much. I don't know if that makes sense. That makes it sound not as fun, I guess. But honestly, it was the most beautiful story about growth and healing and love and just all sorts. Like, it is a love story, but there's so much more to it than love, which I just think is amazing. There was so much character development and growth, and it was just incredible. I honestly just loved it, and it was very close to being a 5-star. I just had a couple of little things that happened in the story which I thought were unnecessary, and it just didn't give the 5-star feeling. I feel like that's if you're reading a 5-star book, and it was close, but it just wasn't quite 5-star, if that makes sense. So yeah, 4.5 stars. I highly recommend it. It was just incredible. I wish I could explain more, but I don't want to spoil anything. I find it really hard to, like, try and recommend a book without giving a book away. The next book I read in May was Losing Hope by Colleen Hoover. Now, the first book I read in this whole year was Hopeless by Colleen Hoover, and I absolutely loved it. So you get back. Now, this is like the sister book to this. So you get out. It is basically the same story, but from Holder's point of view. So the whole story, it's like the same, but from his point of view, which sounds boring because it would be like, why would you want to read the same book again? But not only did I wait 5 months before I read it, so I had forgotten a lot, but also his sister is involved in a lot of the story, and like his mum and his friends, and so you see a lot of other sides of things. And then it's really, really interesting to see how his mind was working in the same scenes. So a lot of it's not, like it's the same, but it's not the same. But there are a few of the same scenes, but instead of knowing Sky's point of view, you hear all of how he was feeling in the same moment. And I just thought that was so cool because that doesn't really happen. Like even if you have a split POV book, they're usually talking in different scenes. Like you're not seeing the same scene twice from both point of view. You're then seeing her point of view, then his, then hers, then his throughout the story. So it's really cool just to have a whole book that was dedicated to him and sort of his backstory and how he got where he was. And yeah, it was very, very interesting. So that was a 5-star for me. It was incredible. To be fair, May was a really, really good month for me as far as books go. I've had the best time. I don't think there's anything even... Yeah, they're either all 4 or 5 star. So, what a dream. The next book I read was Finding Cinderella, which was the 3rd and final part of the Hopeless series. So, it's just a novella. It was 180 pages, and it is involving Sky's best friend and Holder's best friend and their little story. So it's just like a little side story going on with them, and it was really good. I gave it a 4 stars, and as far as a novella goes, I felt like it did a really good job. It's kind of forbidden romance, but then it ends up like not being as big a deal as what they expected. So that's kind of like they hide their relationship for a while, but then they don't really need to. So yeah, that was kind of interesting, and how their little backstory works is interesting, and it was just a really good book. I enjoyed it. I flew through it. 180 pages. You could do it in a couple sittings. Like, it was really nice. Not overly crazy. Like, nothing crazy happened, but yeah, it was really good, and I highly recommend it. If you're going to read the other 2 books, you might as well read the 3rd as well. You know, just tie it all together. Nice little bow. All done. The 3rd book that I read, I think we buddy read this again. Get back. Oh, yeah, because I told Rachel I was reading this, and then I got halfway through, and then she flew past me and seemed to finish the whole book in like 2 days. She's incredible. She also has a lot more time than me. But this I loved. So, Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. Now, Renee Carlino wrote Swear on This Life, and that was a book, I think I gave that a 5-star. Either 4 or 5. I absolutely loved that book. It was amazing. So, I was really intrigued to see how another book by the same author would go. And you could definitely tell it was written by the same author, which I kind of love. Like, her style is quite unique, and she gives her characters, I don't know, similar background, or I don't know if it was just like a similar feel or if there was as much similarity as I think there was, but there was just a lot that felt the same mood and the same sort of, I don't know, maybe Renee Carlino had some trauma which she's working through via her writing. I don't know. But like the main character, the main woman, I feel like was just came from similar sort of backgrounds, which I found very interesting. So this story was really cool. It was about a couple who you see them falling in love in college when they're like 19 or whatever. And you get to sort of see that unravel for like almost half the book, I would say, or about half the book. And it was beautiful. They are like best friends to lovers. They became really fast friends, but stayed friends for a while, and then eventually, you know, fall in love. It was a really beautiful story, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. They had a lot of fun together. Like, it was a really sweet love story happening. That in a story in itself could have been a good story. They then lose contact, and this is sort of the reason why I couldn't give it a 5-star, because I found as you get further through the story, you find out like both sides of the story of how they lost contact, and I found it dumb. unfortunately. That is like my one crux with this book, is that the reasoning for them losing contact was kind of not enough for me. I didn't feel like it was a good enough reason for them to lose contact, and if they'd just tried a little bit harder, they wouldn't have. But obviously, they needed to for the rest of the story. So yeah, that happens. They lose contact. Then we flash to like 15 years later. So they've obviously both then had their own lives. They've got on with their lives, blah, blah, blah. A whole lot has happened in that time, and they reconnect. I love the way they reconnect. I think that was a really fun way for them to reconnect. It was really, really cool. So I really flew through like that sort of side of things. And then their reconnection was like, okay, sit, drop, good boy. Their reconnection was beautiful and it was nice. And then there was like a random little plot twist in there, which I was okay, but not necessarily necessary. I don't know. It was good, like, and I liked it, but it was kind of like a bit left field, and then I don't know, it was a bit odd. But it was really interesting watching them reconnect and how that happened and how they changed and all of that sort of thing. And yeah, I really, really thoroughly enjoyed this book. There was just, yeah, the reason for them losing contact, I couldn't, like, wasn't justifiable to me. And then the random plot twist sort of at the end was just a bit rogue for me. I don't know. But other than that, the story was amazing. I flew through it. I really, really enjoyed it. Them falling in love was amazing. There was some really interesting things that happened then in that 15 years of them being apart, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, I highly, highly recommend this book. And my lucky last for May was another one that I really enjoyed. I gave it a 4-star, and it was After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And to be honest, I think the only person I've heard mention this is Rachel Catherine. I don't think I've really, maybe because it's not big on like Book Talk and stuff anymore, it's like a bit old. I'm trying really hard to not just read all of the books that are popular right now, because I find that that's really, I don't know, I'm just trying to read other books. And this I loved. I thought the concept of this was amazing. The message behind it was amazing. It was quite thought-provoking, and yeah. So this is about a couple, and you sort of see little flashes at the start of them falling in love, and they're kind of like their mini love story and how they came to be. They then get married, and they've now been married in the present for like 9 or 10 years. Like, they've been together a long time. They got together in college, and you, yeah, got to see a glimpse of them falling in love and how they were, and that was really beautiful. And then, yeah, sort of flashes forward to now, and they're super unhappy. And they snap at each other, and they're not grateful for each other, and they have quite, I wouldn't say it was a toxic relationship, but just not a good relationship. They're not being intimate anymore. They don't communicate well. They just have a lot of issues, which I guess in a lot of relationships that would be when you would call it quits. They were not happy together. They were tense around each other, never happy to see each other, happy when each other left the house. Like, you know, they just weren't thriving in any aspect. And so they decided, instead of to get a divorce, they decided to take a year to focus on themselves and see what came of that. See what happened in a year, if they missed each other, if they wanted to like get back together, sort of just restart their marriage, I guess. And so you get to be on her point of view for this story, and you get to see what she does for that year apart. And it's just so interesting seeing what some time apart could do for them, and when they then come back together at the end of that year to see whether or not their marriage is going to survive. It's just so interesting, and I just have never really read a book like this before. Often it's like they fall in love and then they have a problem and then they get back together and that's it. Whereas this problem was the whole book. Like, the whole book was solving the problem as opposed to it being like a slither. And I just found it incredible, and I found it so insightful on, you know, I've been with my husband for 8.5 years, and we, you know, you go through ebbs and flows, and you have to always be working at your relationship and at your marriage. And I think it just shows such a good message of the fact that marriage is hard work and you've always got to put in the effort and appreciate your partner, and it doesn't just stay wonderful. Like, you don't stay in the honeymoon stage forever. And I just loved it. I could not get enough of it. I just found it so interesting. The story was really good. There was a few little bits in it which I didn't love, and again, it didn't give me that 5-star feeling, but I would highly, highly recommend it to pretty much anyone who is after a good read. So, yeah. Whoa. I just found it incredible and would highly recommend this book to anyone wanting to read something a little bit different as far as romance goes, because they weren't, like, it was a romance, but it wasn't really, because they weren't in the story together really for any of it. It was more self-development and how she learnt to live without him and all of these things, and like, were they going to work out after or not? Like, was this going to be the right idea? Were they going to get back together? How was that going to look? Because, you know, they didn't want to just get back together and fall back into the same patterns they had been in. And yeah, it was just super, super interesting. And then obviously they had to tackle, like, what do her friends say when she's not bringing her husband to things anymore, and like, that's awkward because we're not divorcing, but we're also not together right now, and do we date in between? Do I not? Yeah, it was just really interesting. So I just highly, highly recommend. That is all the books that I read in May. Now, the book that I DNF'd was Book of Night by Holly Black. Ziggy, come here. If you watch my vlogs, you will have seen Rachel and I were trying to buddy read it. She read it. I could not finish it. I kind of hated it, unfortunately. I'm not a massive fantasy person, and I'm trying to get into some fantasy books, but yeah, I just hated the type of magic. I hated the character. Charlie drove me insane. Like, she wasn't enjoyable or likable, really, in any sense, and I just really struggled to get into it, and it was almost going to get me in a book rut. Like, I was so close to, like, being mad at reading, so I decided to put it down, and honestly, I don't think I'll pick it back up because I just kind of hated it, unfortunately. But it is what it is. I'm sure other people love it, and that's so fine. But I just didn't enjoy it. The world building was kind of boring. It was very, very slow, and I wasn't having fun. And reading should be about fun, and I didn't want to force myself to read something just because I was then, like, talking about it and buddy reading with Rachel. So I decided to put it down. Now, I do want to quickly go through my TBR for June, because it's kind of big, but I know I won't read them all. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot that I'm really intrigued by. So currently, I'm reading Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. I obviously learnt that I did love the way that Mia Sheridan wrote, and so I've decided to read Mia Sheridan's Archer's Voice, and so far, we're doing well. I'm also then reading Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is a chunky book, 563 pages, but so far, I'm feeling good about it. Very enjoyable. I also have on my TBR, I have Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey. I'd love to read just like a light-hearted, like rom-com sort of book, so that is on my TBR. I would love to read Beach Read by Emily Hendry, as well as the next book in the Addicted series. I would love to read that. I think it's Addicted for Now, maybe, is the next one. And Rachel has recently told me about a book called Ivy, which I'm quite intrigued about. She read it on someone else's. She heard about it on a different BookTok or BookTuber, and apparently it's like Gossip Girl meets Pretty Little Liars vibes. So I think that would be really fun too. As well as the final book in my series, Stay With Me series. I would love to read the last one of those. I think that would be good, but I'm not in a rush to finish that. I feel like the next book, the second book kind of disappointed me a bit, so I'm not that excited to read the third. But yeah, they're sort of the books I'm looking at the moment. As soon as I go onto the Kindle app, I'm now like, oh my god, there's heaps. I'd love to try 99% Mine by Sally Thorne, November 9 by Colleen Hoover, The Unhoneymooners I would like to read at some point, Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Honestly, I should just do a whole video on like my big TBR, but those first few I said are what I'm hoping to read, like, you know, the 4 or 5 books that I would like to read throughout June. Okay, I am going to stop rambling because Harper is definitely awake and the dog is desperate to go outside for a wee, so I need to stop talking, but I'm just having so much fun. This is my problem. This is why I love mine and Rachel's relationship, because we literally just voice note each other about books all day, and it's the dream. But I'm going to go. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you're planning to read for June. I love hearing other people's TBRs, or what you're reading at the moment, or what you read in May. I love talking books. So yeah, thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next video, which will be very soon. Bye.